So good to watch everybody and welcome. Those on Zoom, those on Facebook. Welcome everybody. Make a little bracha on a Motzei Shabbos. Say l'chaim together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה b'dvaroi. Chaim. A good to watch and a freiliche watch to everybody. And watch that's a proper preparation for Shavuos, Matan Torah. Hashem is going to give again the gift, the 3,323rd time, actually. Even the event was 3,332 years ago. Sorry, it's 3,333, 4 threes. That's going to be the reoccurrence. So auspicious time, and we need to prepare and celebrate. So first, l'chaim bracha. I'm sure everybody had a good Shabbos in preparation, as we spoke before Shabbos, to help us to prepare properly. I'd like to just share firstly the Hayom Yom from today, the Rebbe's daily thought for the 29th of Iyar. The soul ascends 3 times a day. This is speaking about our soul, not something that we're attuned to. The higher elements of our soul ascends 3 times a day during each of the 3 prayer services. This is especially true of the souls of tzaddikim, of the righteous, of whom it is said, they proceed from strength to strength. It is certain that at all times and that in every holy place they offer supplication and prayer for those who are bound to them, the people who are bound to the tzaddikim, to the righteous people, and to their directives, and to those who carry out their directives, especially their students and their students' students, that they be delivered materially and spiritually. Wow, powerful idea over here. So we pray 3 times a day, and our soul ascends 3 times a day. Even if we don't experience it, the fact is that our soul is ascending. The righteous, they sense it, and the righteous who are no longer with us physically, but are spiritually with us, if we follow their path, their directives that they give to us, then they are there for us, as actually the Alter Rebbe writes and quotes from the Zohar, that they are more found, more available after their passing than when they are physically alive. And they take care of us. How do they take care of us? Materially and spiritually. So that's a powerful idea. As we prepare for Shavuos, we need to know that we are students or students of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe is no doubt taking care of us. 3 times a day when we daven, his soul is going from strength to strength in a manner that is helping us materially and spiritually. So, start with the thought of the day. So we're on a mission. What's our mission? A positivity bias, as we've been gathering the last 4 or 5 weeks together, and discussing different elements on how we can have a more positive outlook on life. We've dealt with many different aspects. This week, we're going to deal with the concept of simcha, of joy, the joy element in our lives, and the importance, the value of it. And even though, from on a surface level, you say, well, of course, there's no doubt joy is an integral part of Jewish life. But as we will see, there's different elements about joy, and what elements are, should we say, novel, actually, that perhaps we wouldn't think of it in those terms. So I want to take us back in time a bit. Actually, it's an experience that I was there. And actually, Reb Pesach was also there. Not that I didn't know you then, but we were both there. And it was by the Rebbe's Simchas Torah, by the Rebbe's Hakafis. This was Tafshin Lamed Ches, 5738, or in the non-Jewish calendar, it was 1977. And it was Shmini Atzeres, the first night. And at one point, before Hakafis, or no, it was yeah, no, it was, I don't recall, no, by the fourth Hakaf, I think. Now, you know what? My memory doesn't serve me well. The Rebbe sat down in a chair. And what had happened was the Rebbe had a heart attack, as we all, I'm sure, aware of. And I recall very clearly everybody was, screaming to get out and bring air into the room so the Rebbe would be able to have more oxygen, because you're talking of a place that was packed head to toe. I mean, it's hard to describe exactly the scene and what it means, Simchas Torah by the Rebbe. And we ran out, and oxygen was brought back into the room. The Rebbe, though, even though having a heart attack that actually affected half of his heart that was not functioning, asked for the Sefer Torah so he could finish off Hakafis. And he did. And then he went into his room, and the Rebbe did not want to go to the hospital. He wanted, actually, the hospital should come to him ultimately. Not that he made that demand, but he did not want to go to the hospital, even though people requested, begged of him that he should go. And this is something that, whatever, this is what the Rebbe wanted. And this was what was created, a hospital room in his office. Dr. Ira Weiss, a leading cardiologist from Chicago, came in, and he was a lead physician in the Rebbe's recovery. 38 days later, the Rebbe had an extraordinary recovery. So I want to quote something that he said, Dr. Ira Weiss. The Rebbe had a heart attack that involved such extensive damage that in anyone's normal medical experience, one would worry about the possibility of survival. One would almost discount any possibility of subsequent functionality at the level of the Rebbe's. But the Rebbe's a Rebbe, and this is what occurred. Now, I just want to share something that maybe Reb Pesach can even has some things that he can share with us, because this is also under the medical care of the Rebbe's doctor in Crown Heights, who is Reb Pesach's mechutin, Dr. Robert Feldman. And so he tells the following story, and I'm quoting from him. When the Rebbe first had the heart attack and was brought to his office, I reported to him that some of the Hasidim were still singing and dancing in honor of the festival of Simchas Torah. It was a holiday, remember? The day when we rejoice with the Torah. He looked directly at me. Dr. Feldman is saying, the Rebbe looked directly at him when I reported this to him. And when describing the singing of the Hasidim, Dr. Feldman used the term Shira Vizimra, which means song and joy, or song and song, whatever, which made the Rebbe very happy. And over the next period, the only thing that I could say that made the Rebbe happy was this phrase, Shira Vizimra, which I understood to mean that the Rebbe's perspective, not only should the Hasidim not stop being happy despite the ongoing danger to the Rebbe's life, to the contrary, they should continue and increase their joy, and this would bring the Rebbe healing. I remember very clearly as Rabbi Grona, the Rebbe's secretary, Olav Shalom, who just passed away just over 30 days ago, and I can remember very clearly how he would come down and give us an update on the Rebbe's well-being, and saying very clearly that the Rebbe is asking, he hears upstairs the joy that we are celebrating. And And he's asking that we should be full of joy, full of simcha. You can imagine how our hearts felt. I was a yeshiva student at the time, a bacher. Mixed feelings. Here the Rebbe is like massive heart. It's, as Dr. Weiss said, question of survival. And, what would your natural feeling be? Of course, you're going to be down. But the Rebbe says, no, the joy is what's bringing healing. And I remember at one point in the night, I could still picture it so well. I danced literally till 7 o'clock in the morning. Not just me, hundreds of us were dancing till 7 o'clock in the morning, a whole night. And we were singing at some point, the Rebbe is gesund, the Rebbe is gesund, the Rebbe is gesund, Mashiach soll schon kommen, the Rebbe is well, the Rebbe is well. We had such a positive mindset and such joy that we were singing in such a fervent tone, like it was whatever. That's what it was. Remember a Pesach? It was something, right? So, anyways, the story doesn't end there.
I just add something,
please. No, I'm not finished with his story. If you wanted to, I'm reading from him to add. If it's a continuation of the story, I'm going to continue.
Of Dr. Feldman. Now go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
Dr. Feldman. Yes.
Tell a little bit what he said. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm just reading from his. All right, Clem, welcome from Brisbane. Please, you can. Okay, so Dr. Feldman recounts further, and I'm quoting from him. If you have something more to add afterwards to him, please. So this then is some years later. This is not now this. The Rebbe had, Baruch Hashem, full recovery, Rosh Chodesh Kislev. The Rebbe went home for the first time. I recall I was studying in Miami Beach in the Chabad Yeshiva over there, and there was a big celebration around the world. The Rebbe went home, and Baruch Hashem. But this is
Rabbi, in regards to the idea that the Rebbe would not go to the hospital, and instead his entire office had to be changed into an ICU. So if you're going on, I just want to tell you
please.
A story just from Dr. Feldman, from Moshe Feldman. He said that he's the one who approached the Rebbe at the time to say that it would make sense to go to the hospital and he would arrange everything. But the Rebbe said to him, I have to stay here, meaning in the Rebbe's office. He says, you know how many people came to this office and their prayers came out from this office on high, and how many people came through this office, and how many people were helped through this office. This is a place of bracha, and there's no better place for me to be. So, right. Understanding that all the brachas that came from all the yechidisen, from all the private audiences that the Rebbe held in that place, he insisted that there would be no better place, because that this is a funnel to on high.
Shkoya, thank you for sharing that. So, so continuing, so some years later on Simchas Torah once again. So Dr. Feldman was there, of course, in 770. It was extremely crowded. And he writes, I was honored with holding the Torah and joining the Hakafas with the Rebbe. I was given a Torah and walked towards the center of the shul. The Rebbe, holding his Torah, led the procession and was about 3 people in front of me, Dr. Feldman says. A narrow path between the tables led to the shul center, and there were men and boys standing on the tables on both sides. It was like walking down a narrow alleyway. As the Rebbe gets to the middle of the shul and enters the dancing circle, the circle closed behind him. I can't go forward. I can't go back. I'm standing there holding the Torah between these 2 columns of tables. Everyone starts to sing and dance. Suddenly, a young man standing on the table on one side of me decides that he's going to put his foot over this little alleyway on top of the other table. The next thing I know, he's dancing and he's bouncing up and down while sitting on my head. I had my hat on. My hat was flattened, and I was still bouncing up and down. He was still dancing and bouncing up and down on top of me. He had no idea what he was doing. I felt like I was having a concussion. I was dizzy. I just had no place to go. I mean, we're talking about sardines was like that's lots of room. You packed like sardines in 770 Simchas Torah, that's like lots of room. It's much more than sardines. After the Hakafa, we finally got back to the front, put the Torahs back in the Aron Kodesh, and I stood there squashed, looking around for a way to get out of there. I was sweating. My kapota was torn. My hat was flat, and I just had to get out of there. That's all I knew. I was fainting. All of a sudden, from the platform, the Rebbe motioned to me that I should approach him. How would I get up there? The Bachrim pushed me on top of their heads, and they pushed me up there. Now, this is not exactly a petite individual, and there's no room. There's no, like, you can't make a push away, and you're going to get some room for some people to walk. That's how packed it is. So literally overhead. He's being pushed overhead, everybody, because the Rebbe is motioning to him that he should come forward.
This is before body surfing became popular.
Much before. and this was not a popular sport, except that this is the only way. If the Rebbe is motioning and telling you to come over, it's the only way you're going to get there.
You started body surfing.
So I was saying to myself, I don't feel good myself. I hope the Rebbe is not sick from all of this activity. How am I going to respond now to him? How am I going to take care of him if I'm not feeling well? I approached the Rebbe. He looked at me and said, "How do you like my medicine?" This is what the Rebbe said to him. "How do you like my medicine?" I realized that the Rebbe was referring to the time just after his heart attack when I told him that the Chassidim were singing and dancing with Shira v'Zimra. He was calling that his medicine, saying that the simcha, the joy, is the best medicine. Simcha is the best medicine. I had to admit to the Rebbe that it's better than my medicine. Which, by the way, is also why the Rebbe wanted to stay in his room, is because he could have the joy of all of the Chassidim in 770 who are right underneath in the shul. Anyways, the story doesn't end over there. 14 years later, 1992, as I'm sure we're familiar and aware that the Rebbe suffered a stroke on Chav Zayin Adar. Once again, Dr. Feldman was called upon to tend to the Rebbe. And he writes, so I'm quoting from him again. The Rebbe was brought back to 770 after the stroke which he had suffered while at the resting place of the previous Rebbe at the Oihel. And he was brought in a wheelchair into his room. The secretaries were there as well. I walked over to the Rebbe. He looked at me directly and said, the Rebbe said, "Shira v'Zimra." I thought maybe I was taking this out of context. Maybe I didn't hear him correctly. But the Rebbe kept repeating, "Shira v'Zimra." And he kept on looking at me when he said it. No matter what I said, trying to figure out something else that Rebbe could have meant. No, he only was happy when I repeated back to him, "Shira v'Zimra." Joy and song. Imagine if you and your wife or your friend have gone through a situation before, and now you're presented with a similar situation. You just look at each other, and that one tells you, "Oh, this is the same thing all over again." That's what it felt like. So here, the Rebbe is suffering a stroke. And by the way, that was the month of Adar. It was a leap year that year. So it was a 2 months of Adar, 60 days. And the Rebbe, which we didn't catch, we only caught it, kind of speak, afterwards. The Rebbe spoke throughout the month of Adar that it's 60 days of joy, and that those 60 days of joy, as there's a halachic ruling when it comes to kosher and non-kosher, that if you have 60 parts of something, let's say milk, and some chicken fat falls into a vat of milk, if there's 60 parts more milk than there is of the chicken fat, then it's kosher because it nullifies it. So the Rebbe used this principle. It says 60 days of joy nullifies all of the decrees that are negative in heaven. Now the Rebbe didn't tell us what the decree was, but obviously on the 27th day of Adar, when the Rebbe had his stroke, we understood only too well. And even coming back from the oil after the stroke, the two words that the Rebbe says is Shira v'Zimra, joy. That's quite a powerful idea. Now, let's put this into context and give some a brief history, maybe, so we can have a little appreciation how to appreciate this idea in context of Jewish thought and Jewish teachings. So prior to the Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, and in particular the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, Shulchan Aruch, the focus, the motivational focus for Jews in maintaining a Jewish life and observance of Torah mitzvahs was really based on reward and punishment. Right? Do the mitzvah, you get a great reward, and the opposite is, self-understood. And there was also a social structure that if you were learned, Torah scholars, so then you could, so to speak, move up the social structure as a result. And it worked very well for centuries. Came the Baal Shem Tov and introduced that it's not sufficient to be motivated by the reward that a person is going to get and the punishment that they might get if they don't do what they need to do. And he brought the idea of joy. Now, let's understand, what does that mean in Judaism? It's there. We'll get there in a moment to explain. The Alter Rebbe, those who were against the teachings of Chabad and Hasidus in general, made libelous charges against him to the Tsar of Russia, to the Tsar's government, and he was imprisoned. One of the charges, of the several charges, was that they are a cult. They are not the Jewish religion. And what's one of the proofs that they are not really part of the Jewish religion is because they demand their followers to be always joyous. Always joyous. And that's not part of Judaism. Now, what does that mean? How do we understand that? Not joyous. Not supposed to be joyous. Now, first of all, excuse my spring allergies today are in full force. Baruch Hashem. It's all good, but that's all it is. It's spring allergies. So let's put this in context. The idea that actually Moshe Rabbeinu says in the Torah, because you did not serve God with joy, then there's going to be many terrible things calamities that will befall you. Your enemies will have a gain over you. But what is that in reference to? And also when David HaMelech, King David says, Yivdav Hashem b'simcha, that you should serve God with joy. What is that in a reference to? The service of God. You're doing a mitzvah, do it with joy. You're putting on your tefillin, you're praying to God, you're studying Torah, you're doing a mitzvah. That mitzvah needs to be done with joy. Simcha shel mitzvah, it's called. The joy of doing a mitzvah. Absolutely. But besides that, joy does not have a place. As a matter of fact, it's frivolous. It's even hedonistic, as was viewed back in the day. Baal Shem Tov, taking from the teachings of Pirkei Avos, which we did the 6th chapter today, says, well, in all of your ways you need to know God. In other words, even when it comes to eating and drinking, which are not a mitzvah, except on Shabbos, of course, and holidays, but regular eating, drinking, sleeping, and business, it's not a mitzvah to do. You have permission to do it, but it's not a mitzvah. Of course, when you do those things, you have to do it in the appropriate manner, but it's not something that you're obliged to do. You have permission. But he says that since the Mishnah is telling us that we should serve God in all of our ways, that means we need to broaden the definition of what it means to serve God. Serve God is not a compartmentalized things. I have those things that I do for God, our daily obligations, and then there's those things that are the human endeavor, the human engagement. They're not, they have parameters to them, yes, but they're not a mitzvah. So when it comes to the mitzvah, Yivdav Hashem b'simcha, you have to serve God with joy. Absolutely. Otherwise, you're telling God that, that this mitzvah, you're not happy that God gave it to you. And that itself, as it says in the verse in the Torah, will bring calamity. So you need to serve God with joy when it comes to a mitzvah. But the other area is not. The Baal Shem Tov says, no. There isn't compartmentalizing. When it comes to serving God, it's all one and the same thing. Every area in our life is the service of God. The distinction is only some are biblical commandments, some are rabbinic commandments, and some are just an area that is a permissible area. But in those areas, we still need to know God. We still have to do it for the sake of God. We still have to do it in a manner that we are serving God. This is what the Baal Shem Tov introduced. And therefore, those areas need to be done with joy, with complete joy. Now, it goes a step further. Not only do we need for ourselves to serve God in every area with joy, but beyond that, this has a profound effect on high. The fact that we are doing it with joy. In other words, again, to do the mitzvah with joy, that's a concept that always existed. That's from times of Moshe Rabbeinu, from Moses in the Torah, that always existed. But that living all of my life should be with joy, that's a chiddush, that's a novelty. The fact that joy affects heaven just because I'm joyous, now that's truly a novelty. I want to tell you the following story, and I'm going to quote and read it. The Mittler Rebbe, who is the son of the Alter Rebbe, Shneur Zalman, Dov Ber is his name. He formed what's called the Kapella, which is an orchestra and a choir. And he had another group of Hasidim that performed tricks on horseback. On a special joyous occasions, he would ask these groups to perform. The Rebbe's son, Reb Nachum, happened to be one of these horsemen. One day, for no apparent reason, the Rebbe instructed both of these groups to perform. This was extremely unusual, as there was no apparent cause for celebration, nor was it a special date on the calendar. Yet the Chassidim performed while the Rebbe stood on his balcony and watched. Suddenly, Reb Nachum fell off his horse. Informed that his son was in grave danger, the Rebbe, his father, the Middle Rebbe, merely motioned with his hand that the festivities should continue. After a while, the Rebbe asked them to stop, and he stepped into his private office. A doctor was summoned, and Reb Nachum's situation proved far less severe than previously thought. He had a broken leg, but no more. The Rebbe was then asked why he had told the horsemen and the choir to continue their performance while his beloved son lay injured. Good question, huh? He responded, "Why don't you ask me even a better question? Why did I ask the horsemen and the choir to perform on a simple weekday in the..." The Rebbe explained, "Today was meant to be a harsh day for my son. I saw a grave accusation against him in the heavenly court. The prosecution was very powerful, and I could see only one way out. Joy sweetens divine severities. So I therefore called upon the choir to sing and asked the riders to gladden everyone with their antics. The joy thus created tempered the strict decree against my son. But a small portion of the decree remained. That is why he fell off the horse and hurt his leg. However, the continued joy lessened even this residual decree. God willing, Nachum will recover in the very near future." What a powerful story. Still can't get over it. This is the novel approach that started with the Baal Shem Tov and continued through all of the generations, that there is something literally about the fact that we are joyous, that it in itself would annul a decree in heaven. Now, again, I want to give you historical context over here. Think about it for a moment. It's so counterintuitive. How would we think if, God forbid, there was a decree against, we knew that there was a decree in heaven against whatever, whoever, shouldn't be on anybody. What would our first notion be? As if we're going to pour out our heart and do tshuva. We're going to have a broken heart to stand with humility before God in prayer. Maybe fast, maybe say Tehillim, or maybe all of these things put together. But the natural inclination would be, if there's some kind of decree, not joy, the opposite. You're going to have a broken heart before God, please annul this decree. And there's a truth to that. The Baal Shem Tov himself says the gates of tears are opened on the highest gates above that can open up funnels of light and blessing in untold ways. But you know what's greater than that? Joy is even greater than the gates of tear. Why? Why would it be greater? Well, we can tie it in with the previous couple of times that we got together on Motzei Shabbos and had this time together. And that is maybe because we have perfect faith in God, trust in Him. When you are with a broken heart. So you're broken heart because of your situation, and you're pleading God because you know it's up to him. But that doesn't mean you trust that it's going to be okay. But perhaps if we had the great trust, then we would be joyful. Perhaps that's the answer over here. And this is another story about the Rebbe in a private audience with a chassid who was expressing negativity and pessimism about his future. The Rebbe stood up in his office in Gan Eden Elyon, took out a volume from the Zohar from his shelf and placed it before the chassid and opened up to the following passage. Come and observe. Our world is always ready to receive the spiritual flow that emanates from above. The upper world provides in accordance with the state below. If the state below is joyous, then correspondingly, abundance flows from above. However, if the state below is one of sadness, then correspondingly, the flow of blessings is constricted. Therefore, said the Rebbe, serve God with joy, because human joy and optimism draw a corresponding joy of understand. How it was that on one hand, in 1977, Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, the Rebbe had a massive heart attack, that we were, on one hand, with a broken heart, on the other hand, full of joy. And singing even the words, the Rebbe is gesund, not the Rebbe will be gesund, will be well, but the Rebbe is well. That we were just so assured, so positive that this is the reality, and we create that reality. As we've spoken so many times, trach good, design good, think good, and it'll be good. But here is with that positivity, with that sense of joy, breaking heaven, bringing the flow down, not with a broken heart, but with true, pure joy that shows the great trust that we have in God, that he will indeed bring that flow of blessing from on high. So folks, Shavuos is coming, and this is our time to prepare. How are we preparing? There's a multitude of ways. We spoke every Shabbos about, and now we speak about the concept of joy. Shavuos is a time that we get a flow of abundance from above. On one hand, we need to have the Kabbalah soul and the fortitude of just giving ourselves over. We do tikkun, we do what we have to do what we got to do, and be open, of course, to the flow from above, to be there by the 10 Commandments. Everybody, if you're not able to be in synagogue, if there's gatherings that there is the reading of the Torah, and if not, at least in our homes, we need to make sure that the 10 Commandments are read with our family, and that God will give us that blessing from above, the Torah, that will be our guide for the future in our lives. How are we approaching all of this before we even get there? With complete joy, complete confidence that we will have everything that we need from above, with the Torah that God will give us renewed with Mashiach now. Wish everybody a wonderful evening, and thank you very much for joining. Any questions? So, Joel and my son Label, my son Mendel, Liana, Denise and Linda are with us, daughter Esti, a whole mishpacha. Sina, Tim, and Joe with all right. So a good tavach. Thank you all for joining. And tomorrow night, 6:30 for Torah studies. Come and join us right here at the same place. Good tavach and good preparations for Shavuos. Be well.
Good tavach, shkoyach, shkoyach.
Good tavach.
Good to
Good tavach.
Good to Thank you.
Thank you.